We can start the meeting of my youngest daughter's 40th birthday today, December 17th, with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Okay.
And happy Hanukkah.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now, Diane didn't bring down the agendas, but tonight, basically, we're just talking to the school department. We're going to do approval of minutes, but she has those upstairs.
Why don't we move forward
Yes,
with the order of the agenda and bring them to school?
absolutely. And, because we don't even have the minutes down here yet. There she is. And tonight we have Christine, and we have the superintendent of schools, Mike, here to explain the revised information for us.
Well, thank you for having us back. I will always start by prefacing that this is a work in progress, so we're moving right along and making some adjustments as we go through the process. So on the first page is the summary for the junior senior high school. And so you can see in the first column under the FY 16-17, we have a couple of projects that are listed there. One of them being building security, talks about backup boiler, asbestos removal, and some windows and athletic storage. Towards the middle of the page, you can see there's a total, so you can see what we're asking for the 16-17. Again, these are just projections and estimates that we're working off of. One thing to keep in mind, how school districts raise the money to pay for these projects is through warrant articles. So throughout these monies that you will see, what has to happen is we have to raise it and put it into a trust fund to then be able to withdraw it later. With the one exception, which I made a slight note there, it says already funded, is for the backup boiler. Because we already have money set aside in a trust fund for repair and maintenance, they kind of earmarked those funds. So those funds are already available to us if we wish to act on that project at any time.
Sooner rather than later, yes.
So, but anything else that we do for projects that you'll see throughout this entire report will all have to be raised at some time.
Just a question, the dual purpose fund, I thought you mentioned last time was going to be about 130,000 you thought was left. Did that,
No,
no? Okay.
I thought it was going to be about 8,000.
Oh, okay.
So if I said 132, I completely misspoke.
Not a
But
problem.
no, I was earmarking about $8,000 left over. We got we have a couple, we had an outstanding invoice that came in from Turner Corporation, So what you see here, this is as of the end of November 30th. And this is, so what Russ is talking about is the dual purpose. We have $3,000 left.
Dual purpose fund, 3,000,
Yep.
okay.
The school repair and maintenance that I was referring to has $284,000. We have the school technology trust fund of 116. Utility capital is 25. Special ed is 295,000, and the expansion is 71,000. So those are the only trust funds that we currently have, and those are as of, like I said, November 30th.
And the expansion requires a vote of the town.
That's correct. The agents to expend is the school board for all of these, with the one exception of the very top one, the expansion of schools. That has to be voted on by the citizens or taxpayers.
So for the backup boiler then, and which is very clear, I appreciate it, you're taking 275 out of the 284 for the first year.
Yep.
And then you have already funded, meaning what? That should be the total cost, and you don't need any additional money?
It's just an estimate, yes. And I just put that little bracket that it's already funded because we have enough money in that school repair and maintenance line, whereas all these other projects that you'll see have not been raised yet. So we'd have to raise the money and do it in a phase project, or raise it and hold on and wait until we get enough money to do the project. So it depends on what the process that the board decides at that time.
You do have some under the school repair and maintenance trust fund.
We do.
You can apply those funds
That's where
to
the
it.
funds are coming from.
That's where the funds are coming from. And it doesn't have to necessarily be the backup boiler that those funds come from.
Okay.
But that was what was originally earmarked and what we explained to the citizens when we put the last year's warrant article for $100,000. We kind of pretty much said that that was to set up a plan to address the boiler situation, whether it be a backup or a new
Okay.
plant or whatever the case may be.
So at the end of
So-
16, 17, that should be down to about $9,000 or something like that, because you'd be withdrawing the 275 out of it.
I don't want to commit to that we're doing that project. This is not a commitment to any of these projects, this is just to get the
Okay.
projects out
Gotcha.
there. If the board decided not to do that project, then that would obviously just free up that $284,000 for other projects to be done. So
Okay,
I just
that's good.
earmarked that money for that specific purpose, but
Super.
nothing's binding.
But in light of the condition and how much it costs you for maintenance each year and the loss of oil, the efficiency of it, it would be better to do it sooner rather than later. Yeah.
One more point, without redundancy, meaning without a backup plan if that boiler should fail in its structure. Boilers come in sections and they're made out of cast iron and they sometimes can crack a leak and they have to separate it. So to lose a lot of time in school, we're genuinely concerned about that. And I think last year at the deliberative session, the board mentioned that the $100,000 for repair and maintenance, they identified the boiler as the reason for the request of that additional money. So I think they're studying it. I think the facilities committee is going to struggle with it a little bit moving forward.
Why would they struggle with something that's so obvious and that's been talked about for several years that has to be replaced ASAP?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Best I can tell you, it hasn't come up as a specific issue, but would be one of saying, if there's something that we can do today that makes sense, that we know we can use tomorrow, based on thinking that we'll still have need for that boiler, even if we have to expand it because of expansion in the school, then that still may be a very viable, to the extent that people can't come out and say, we're not sure enough, we may radically change this, let's not waste $275,000 on a boiler we can't use a year from now or a year and a half from now, because we're gonna structurally change the school and need a different setup. That's the only guess. I think, Mike, that's what you were thinking about.
I'm thinking about all of those things. I mean, I don't think anybody wants to spend money that somehow doesn't advantage the district long-term.
And if I didn't mention them on the school.
And how much does it cost in a year for maintenance on this? Didn't you say 5,000 last year?
For what?
Maintenance on it?
Oh, I would say more than that. Our heating and repair I remember last year was like almost 10.
And you have
And this year, I think we're already at I can tell you, because I have a.
Would it be less than that this year because you have a contract now?
No, we have contractual preventative maintenance contracts, so we have that regardless. Heating and repair is, unforeseen things that come about that we have to repair on the actual boiler. And so right now, we have spent almost $10,000 in heating repair system this year.
This school year.
Yep.
Yeah, the maintenance contract wouldn't be guaranteeing the equipment, it would just say going through
Yeah.
It does our annual
the annual
cleanings,
maintenance,
inspections,
cleaning, et
clean-outs,
cetera, but if there's.
oil filter changes, excuse me. Let me see if there's anything else.
Dr. Christine, in theory, are
Hold on.
all the dollars here ones that would be coming out of the capital in your mind, or would they be some funded out of operating, or
What was that? I'm sorry?
all the numbers you had down here?
Right.
Because we're doing the CIP for the first time, and the CIP, in theory, should be focused against capital needs.
Yep.
But historically, you haven't funded that way on maintenance or other things like that. So would the school be saying, if the school board agrees to take a portion of this money like the town does and says, I'm going to add to my budget a request for, $300,000 contribution to my trust funds?
We can't do it that way.
Okay,
We cannot put it in the operating budget. We have to put it listed out as a separate warrant article.
okay.
So we'd have to, if we wanted to pay for a project, a specific project, we could put that in the budget. So if we wanted to pay for windows, we could put that in the project, but we can't raise money using the operating budget to fund a trust fund. It has to be
So
an
some of these projects may be funded out of operating if it's a specific project that's approved and you could budget for. It wouldn't necessarily all be out of capital.
All right,
But either way,
We're
it's
running
raised
out
through
of time.
taxation, and then we
yeah.
have to save, put money to the side.
we're running out of time, Russ, we have. So basically then, so the building security, you've got 2015, this whole first, the estimated total cost down here comes to a total cost of 13 million for everything needed, and we start putting money away fiscal year 16, 17.
Correct.
So,
And just keep in mind that of that 493, 275 has already been raised.
are already funded.
Right.
Out of the
Because we're
493.
already so far within the budget process and everything like that, that we could.
Okay. So then basically, do you plan on fiscal year 17, 18 is having the warrant articles, in other words, making loans to, in order to do all these?
Not loans, but a bond.
A bond?
Right.
Yep.
Okay.
I think the target would be the school facilities committee.
Correct.
And then the school board would have some recommendation on
Yep.
school renovations or a new school or something by that time.
17,
So
18
this
is
would get
really,
rolled up into that bond request.
it's a real pivotal year for the school district because the facilities we're working hand in hand with the facilities committee right now and the architect to draft up plans and to assess all the needs of the district-wide, not just junior, senior high school, but district-wide. And so that year is a real pivotal year in what projects can be incorporated into that bond and what that bond will cover. So if the bond doesn't cover a specific purpose, say athletic equipment doesn't get funded next year, that may be something that they would continue to fund through a warrant article, not into the bond and things of that nature. So next year is really a pivotal year to see where some of these projects will either stay on or come off.
And the numbers you're using in 17, 16, 17, 18, if I understood them correctly, are reasonably based on estimates that have come out of prior reports, either of the JAC or Ingrid or things like that, so.
Or quotes from vendors.
Right,
Yep.
so
correct.
they are supported in some way. It doesn't mean it's the final decision,
Yeah.
but that was the
Yep,
estimate.
and the backup is if you just flip through behind the pages, again, this is just a summary, kind of a snapshot of what the junior, senior high school projects entail. And then if you go flip, there's a page for each project. There's a couple that we combined just to save on paper. But you can see how the funding works, what the current balances are, and how we're gonna raise the money over 1 year to 3 years or 5 years. And then it will tell you at the very bottom under 4, Central Signal was the one that we have received a quote from, things of that nature. So you can kind of drill down into more detail throughout the project. And then if you continue on, you'll see that there is another, about 5 pages back, you'll see there's another summary sheet, and that's discussing our elementary school. And again, so it starts in the 16, 17 year. So again, building security is being a priority, and carpet replacement is being, necessary. And then again, same process. So the total, what we're looking to raise in that fiscal year and how we're going to do it. So majority of these are through, trust funds. We do have some borrowing again because that's part of Ingrid's plan to assess the needs district-wide. So again, all based on vendors or consultants that we've worked with in the past, and so forth.
So then basically, on the summary sheet for the junior, senior high school, it's basically based on renovations to do, I don't know what architect or what GC that you use to come up with these numbers.
That was Banwell.
The same ones that the school
Same.
facility,
The one that
same
we're
ones
currently
that
contracted.
JAC used and the school facilities committee
Okay,
uses.
now,
So they are pretty
so
familiar with
basically,
the
these numbers here, the 13 million, comes out to do a renovation at the school.
Ad
But,
reno.
but that, an ad rental, but that hasn't been decided as to whether that's going to be done or not, has it?
Correct.
Right, not until 17 or 18.
And that's why I think it's critical just to say again that we're working, kind of parallel with the facilities committee, because we can only move as fast as the facilities moves, just because we need to be in sync to make sure that whatever decision that they make is the right decision to move forward. So again, like I said, some of these projects can be added on, they can move, they can come and go. It's a very fluid process right now because we're kind of in a pivotal.
I think this is working the right way, though. I mean, if you're saying these are the things that need to be done in the school, you're letting capital side know, School Facilities is now working this year, and hopefully a warrant article will come out in the beginning of 17-18, which will deal finally with the ed reno.
Judy, any questions?
Yeah, is there any room that some of these items on 17, 18, the ones starting with classroom renovations down to new classroom additions, would be moved into this current, future, this 16, 17?
No. Nope.
Are any of them such a priority that they should be?
No, it doesn't, no, we just feel that, so just under the projects, you can see I referenced in the parentheses there whether it was urgent or compulsory, necessary, desirable. So you can see it was necessary, but it wasn't anything that was urgent. And just because of something of that nature, if you're gonna use, you're gonna have to pay for architectural and engineering to be able to do these type of projects in this classification, because you're talking design work and bidding and all that. So you're actually gonna get more bang for your buck if you do it all at once. Because if you're gonna bring the equipment and the contractors out here, you might as well do it, because it's gonna be tied in with asbestos abatement, depending on the classrooms and, you know, and things of that nature. So it kind of all is commingled in a way.
But you already have asbestos removal for this coming year.
Right.
You have those identified as
That's just to raise-
specific?
Yes, that's specific, but it's also to start raising the funds for asbestos, so that if you don't do a bond and you don't touch these classrooms, you still can continue with your
Okay.
plan to abate, so that eventually you will not have to do any more HERE inspections and you'll be asbestos-free in the facility.
And that's kind of why, too, we do the CIP, is so that you don't have to have these large numbers voted on, and it's to put money aside each year in order to do it, not just to wait for one year and, you know, expect almost 4 million, 1.5 million, and 2.5 million all at once to be bonded out. I mean,
Yep.
and what's the reason for not putting it out this year? Is because there are other things that will be on the ballot? Have all the warrant articles been decided?
What won't be, what are you specifically referring to?
Well, you're gonna put this on for next year.
Well, last time when I sat here, I said we didn't have the money now. We didn't plan to do it this year. And so it was advised that we need to do it looking out. So we're looking out, but that's not to say that if there's a need to do it now, meaning there was a hazard because asbestos tile was lifting and I needed to abate, that's not to say that I wouldn't take care of it. But that's not,
But if this gets
Tied to
rolled
this.
up into the ed reno project of next year, that'd be part of it, and they're saying they can wait a year, there's no urgent need.
there's no
to
urgent
remove
need, there's nothing.
asbestos this year.
There's no safety or health concerns with the asbestos. The
Okay.
floors are all in good condition. I don't think a child's gonna go lifting out a chalkboard and any of that nature, so there's no concerns right now to address it.
And you're waiting for the facility committee to come forward with their recommendations and for it to be vetted through the political process,
You
right?
got it.
So that
Exactly.
makes sense.
Yeah.
The only other quick question I had was, that you have $30,000 for personnel costs and
Correct.
15 in the elementary school.
Elementary school.
Yep.
Is that an actual hire, or is that consulting fees, or?
Nope, that's an actual hire. We think that we would need to bring in an additional custodian with the space that we'd be
Oh, okay.
expanding on. So
Yeah, it
that's why
wasn't
it's
explained
personnel.
here, so that would be
Yep.
a part-time or full-time custodian?
Yep. And the same thing, we'd have to, and we have a part-timer at the elementary that we would make full-time, just because the additional expansion of the building would require additional services to be,
But that would fall under personnel. To me, that would be a budget.
Right.
That's
We
not a
asked
She
for
has that out of
we asked for the operating costs affiliated with the capital improvements so that there's a full understanding of what the costs will be.
Yep.
If there's
And
a
then it would
need to
get rolled
hire an
in.
additional person to facilitate that project, then you know what that cost is going
And she'd be
forward.
showing this coming out of the general fund, not out of capital.
Right.
Right.
So
Okay.
she's
So you
saying, I
can't
need
just look at the
30, but I'll
capital
get it
costs.
out of my regular operating budget.
yeah.
All right.
And then just to go down that one, you can see the 71,000 that I put for the trust fund. If you refer back to your trust fund sheet, that is from the expansion of school facilities. So
Okay.
I plan on accessing the funds that we currently have and then borrowing the rest. So,
So the only people impact of all the projects collectively at this point is just being able to say, due to expanded space, we need to be able to maintain.
Larger space, yep.
Okay, great.
Like, yeah, we can do the.
So do you want to do the elementary
Yes.
or, okay, same thing. Okay, so if you could just flip back to, it's like page 7.
Can I ask a quick question, Christine? Are you at all concerned about depleting your school repair and maintenance fund? You use all of that for the boiler? I mean, are there other
Probably took her.
looming issues for school repair and maintenance that, or
That's really the one and only issue that really impacts on us servicing and providing school, is that. So I'm not concerned, I just don't want it. So the vehicle in which we're raising these monies, I'd like them all to go into like one pool. So if at any point an emergency were to arise, I'm not going to be tied into something that says window replacement and I now need,
A separate trust fund.
yeah, you know, I now need, whatever the case may be, I now need, I don't know, a boiler, even though.
Yeah.
So
You
you
know what I
sort
mean?
of
So I
have
don't
to
wanna-
all slide under the bond and
All
as
slide under
one
bond,
large amount.
or if we're gonna start as a capital improvement plan, maybe the trust fund be called the capital improvement trust fund, so that all the monies go into one pool and then can be accessed depending on what the specific need is. And if it's tied to the CIP, it's clear. If an emergency arises, then that would be a case where we could access the fund. Just, I don't wanna be tied up to a name of specific purpose, because then your hands are tied that you can only expend from that trust fund for the specific purpose.
But if you make one up, say you have a warrant article, because it sounds like that's an interesting thought, and say, I'd like a warrant article to approve a capital improvement trust fund
Right.
to be used for capital projects of the school board. Okay. And whether you fund it or not, you're asking the community to approve that. It would sort of be like the dual purpose fund was the first fund that said, I didn't have to give the money back
Right,
at the end of the year because I can hold it for the other purpose I established it.
correct.
So if you establish a general capital improvements fund, like you have
Yes.
a general maintenance fund, you could fund that through a contribution every year and not be specific on the project.
Correct.
Okay, great idea.
Yeah, just because if I ask for $300, 300, yeah, that's gonna be a new. If I ask for $300,000 and I can get it in for 275, well, now I've got 25,000 that I can apply to the next project and so forth. And it's just a revolving account that would just continue, and as you need, you would just draw on it. So it would just help for budgetary planning.
But with whatever is listed here on that line and the money's put aside for it, that's usually just, like, say, for the classroom additions at the elementary school, that money could be used only to do those classroom additions.
Yes, but all that money would be tied into one, so that if I didn't want to do the windows and I had enough money to do the classroom additions now, even though I was raising another 50,000 in the upcoming year, I could do it now, because I have enough money in one pool to do that one project now, rather than saying, oh, I gotta wait 3 years because I don't have the money in that account. See what I'm saying?
Can we say anything like, it's a facilities fund, right? That could be used for several things, blah, 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 to include and not be limited to the following,
Absolutely.
right?
Yeah.
So that way there, it allows you to hit a window, hit a door, hit a boiler, whatever you need. Right, does that make sense?
That the general operating budget would not.
Right,
And that's sort of what the school maintenance fund is today.
yeah, exactly, yep.
Right. I mean, kind of like the town has the, what is our building and grounds trust fund, right? Is that what it is? I forget what it's called, but.
Capital
you know,
Reserve
that-
Fund.
Right, and so all monies are withdrawn from that one fund to go, to work on town hall, or to maybe work at the fire station, or to work
Yeah,
at the police
and you
station.
could use that, but you
The
could
school-
change.
The school works a little differently, and I think in the past, all the trust funds that were here
Were
were
designated.
considered, let's put money away so if we have a bad operating year, like if special ed goes or there's an unusual maintenance expense, we have some reserve cash so we don't blow the budget, and we can still do it. It was never thought of as a capital fund, it was more of a, if operation blows up in one area,
More of an
we have
emergency.
some coverage. I think, I'm hoping the shift will be towards funding, maybe not all of it, but some regular capital contribution, recognizing that every 5 or 10 years, you're gonna have to do some
Right.
upgrades and improvements.
So you would hope that with a good capital improvement plan, you would have fewer emergencies.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You would hope.
Well, first there's catch-up.
Sure.
I think, Russ, you might have said this once
Addressing
before,
deferred
but the
maintenance.
limitation on the schools being able to fund capital out of the operating budget is town charter or state law, the limitation on that?
The school, I don't know what governs, because it seems that the school can ignore whatever it wants to in the state rules and RSAs.
And that's why you changed your charter this year? Remember you had
Yeah.
that, this year was the year you had all the warrant
Yeah.
articles?
Yep.
Yeah, the charter has now changed so that you can put it into the operating budget for the town, but that's not how it works with the school.
The school has to
And that's a
return what
state
money
law
it doesn't
limitation?
spend.
Yep.
Okay.
Well, and
Statutory.
the difference, just to make, the town side, if they ask for $7 million and they only spend 6, okay, they don't have to give the other million back. They can put it in the general fund. The school, if they ask for 7 million and only spend 6, have to give $1 million credit back to next year's operating budget.
There's
Well,
some carry now. that's
So,
allowed.
Well,
so
if
just
you
be careful, because
push
this
stuff
this
through a
past
warrant
year is the
article.
first year that we passed the 2.5% fund balance retainage.
Right, no, I
So
agree.
the school board has, and
nibble.
will, every single year, have a decision to make whether or not they want to release all that money back to reduce taxes, or to set aside a portion of that not to exceed 2.5, and at no point can it exceed 2.5. For emergency purposes or to reduce the tax rate, and then there's processes that go with that.
And that's still not going to be much more than $200,000-$300,000, somewhere in that range.
No, it's about 327,000.
So it's not like a
But
goal.
apologies for slowing it down. I just was trying to figure out in my mind,
There's
is
stuff in
this,
motion that I think is good and it's important.
is this a school board problem or is this a Mike Cahill, Adam Schroeder problem? And
Yep,
it sounds like it's the latter.
yep. So,
All right.
any other questions, or? Same process, same thing with the elementary, you can see the same projects.
Yep.
Again, the backup is behind it, so if you want to drill down and see where the estimates have come in, one thing that in hindsight, what I probably should have done was put the year in which I got the estimate, so that if you're looking at this later, that you would have known.
We can
If
assume-
it's 2 years or 3 years old, but,
Yeah.
Yeah, we
So-
can assume that it's going to be
In a
more.
perfect world, every year you should get updated data
yeah,
for the CIP.
I would agree.
But then your
But-
vendors say, how many times are you going to ask me for this?
Yeah.
You do get that,
cost
and
of
especially
doing
depending
business.
on the project.
You can plan at least on 3 to 5% easy.
Yeah.
The only
Now,
thing,
I know with the junior high school, you've got the facilities and all that, but when,
the elementary school.
I know, but with the elementary school, when we did the tour there, the junior, senior high has done a lot of work. It looked great. We took the tour. It looked really fantastic. But the needs for the elementary school, for the security, I think, and it's $3 million. And I just think that that's something that we should really,
Not all of that is 3 million for security.
no, it
So-
has, yes.
I just wanna make
But
sure.
yeah, the security is, but,
The security cameras are being addressed. So we're working on that now. We're looking to meet with consultants and address that and move forward, so.
Yep. But, I mean, is there any money to begin the building security as far as the entranceway goes, is ASAP, or?
Again, partnering with the facilities committee, we're really looking at as a whole, district-wide, as part of any type of renovation, addition type of a project that would get all the engineering and architectural that you'd have to do with that would all be.
Are we also looking to see what's happening in Concord regarding any pending legislation on that as well? Just to match, to try to develop a roadmap, right? So, they'll be looking at, so what things are you going to be mandated to do as opposed to just addressing like right today?
Yeah, and that's why we're working with consultants from
Yeah.
Homeland Security.
Okay, that's my point, okay.
And we're bringing them in because they can do assessments of the facilities and tell us what we need to prepare for, the 3 Ds, or defend, deter, and delay, and all that. So there's small things that you can do to make changes, and there's some large things, and so we need their guidance to kind of tell us, not prepare for today, but also for tomorrow and the future.
That's my point, yep.
And make sure when we do it right, because there's
And
nothing
whatever
worse
you
than
do
doing it.
today is in sync with what has to happen tomorrow.
Exactly.
Right.
So we need to, so that's a process, and that's not something.
This is sort of the same as the boiler, if I understand it correctly. They're looking at doing, what security things can I do today to improve things that will be an integral part of what we have going forward, but not wasting
Correct.
money. So I think they're
Exactly.
looking at cameras and a few egress doors, And if they put that fix in now, then the rest of the security will be thought about as part of this overall facility.
I'm thinking more of the fact of just infrastructure. So like, for example, today, you could sit there and say, we're going to, by law, that camera has to be on and update film, every 30 seconds, right? But the infrastructure to support it would be every 30 seconds. A year from now, someone has to say it has to be live, right?
Yep.
No matter what. So to do that, you need Ethernet or fiber.
Fiber.
So I think my concern was if 5G cable costs $1 and Ethernet costs $5, the value of the $5 is much better to us because of where it would ultimately take
Correct.
us. So
Yep.
we're looking at those types of things.
Yeah.
Perfect, thank you.
And vetting all that just takes time because
Yep.
we're in the field of educating, children. That's not our expertise, so we're bringing in the expertise to tell us
Good.
what we need. And it's a partnership because we also have to bring in, the police department because they have to be involved. The town has to be involved because whatever the school and town do should be the same so that the police department is familiar with both systems, fire department as well. So it's
Yeah,
an integral
It needs to
kind
be a
of,
collaborative
Yeah.
approach.
yeah.
I
Yeah,
think
so
we
it's
as a
not-
committee asked that the school and the town address this together, and I
Yep.
thought
Yeah.
we ended
And
up
we are-
hearing
yep.
that the
That
two
they would.
vendors we used on security had a non-compete clause with each other, which I
Yep.
want to blow my head off with, in which case,
we suggested they get different
yeah,
vendors.
they
Yep.
get
Yep.
a single
Yep.
vendor.
So
to-
just look for
So,
someone.
so I mean, unfortunately, you gotta move slow. Sometimes slow and steady wins race, so we're there.
Question to you. One of the things we're talking about that I consider capital would be real estate. Okay, and I know there is some discussion in the school board about some acquiring modest real estate in line with the school facilities changes. I don't see that here as real estate acquisition, so I'm just saying, I love this, I think it's great. You've come a million miles from last year, in my opinion. But that would be one more piece of the puzzle, would be
Okay.
capital basis.
Did they get the information from Jason back there? Equipment? Did they go into it,
I don't know.
or? Okay.
It'd have to do with land acquisition with a warrant article anyway.
Right, right.
All right.
Yeah, no, I was just talking about equipment. If equipment was, I know we kind of went back and forth about equipment. Whether if you buy one iPad, it wouldn't meet the need, but if you're gonna buy 100 of them, then it meets the need. So I wasn't sure where you all stood with equipment, because that could be something else that could be added to it. So how much and how far do you want?
Equipment doesn't, it's a lifetime, isn't it?
You're in a spongy area with technology. Because regardless
No,
of
I
the
meant
cost,
the-
if it's got
the-
a
the
3-year
manual
useful
indicates-
life, you should be
Equipment, if
looking
it's
to
over a
replace it
certain
every
dollar
3
amount.
years.
A
and I
durable
You should be
amount.
replacing
But
it
the
in our
lifetime.
field, but someone would
there's
say
a
a life
lifetime
expectancy
requirement.
could be 5, and it meets the need of 10,000.
10 years.
So you can add it, and so I'm like, well, I don't see it as a capital improvement, but
Can
you
fudge
could.
with
Are you
the,
saying?
You can.
$10,000 or life.
I agree with you, but some don't agree with me, so I don't know.
some
So a computer was close.
No, 3 years on a computer?
Capital improvements.
Oh, easily.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say 5, I mean,
We
is
depreciate them to 3,
anywhere between
Yeah.
3 and 5, I
5,
mean,
yeah.
because I would say a desktop is 5. We were doing 5-year replacements in the school, and 3 years on some of the other pieces of equipment. It all depends on
No, I would
utilization.
agree with that depreciation, yeah.
I just, the capital improvement plan for equipment would be an area of growth for the future. I think that's fair, and I think Christine brought it up very good. We look at a library, a book is not a, but the whole library is. When you look at a classroom of furniture, the desk and chair is really not a capital, but a school full of furniture. And when we first ran into this problem, we were supposed to identify our fixed asset inventory. We take an inventory of all our fixed assets in the building, including equipment, and how that fits into this plan is important, and every town may want to do it a little differently, but I think that's an important thing going forward. Secondly, with the loss of building aid and with the cost of borrowing, I think what you may be beginning is a new way for schools to plan for their capital improvement. And I think this may end up being a little bit bigger 10 years from now than it is today. And there's no question that for years, school districts basically have a budget, and somewhere in that budget, stuffed in it, is the capital budget if they have a bond. And if they don't have a bond that year, then it's just simply an operating budget. But the rules changed when they eliminated building aid, and that was such a big part, not so much in Newmarket, but in towns where there was 55% building aid. It was a huge asset, and I think I'm starting, sitting at these meetings, I'm starting to understand this better, and I think this is maybe where it's going to go.
If you're talking about a rolling bond, like you'd issue a bond for 10 years, and when it matures, you'd try to reissue it again, and that would fund all the capital needs over that 10-year period of time.
And
It's
10-year
it's a structural possibility.
10-year bonds are much more cost-effective than 30. The interest costs are much less, interest rates are less.
But you'd be looking at it as a permanent part of, don't be surprised that we're going to roll this bond over into an additional request. This is always going to be an operating cost, is paying off a bond for the future.
So is debt service.
However every community wants to do that. But I do think the rules have changed.
Well, it's giving you new opportunities.
Yeah.
Structure anything financially, trust me. Depending on the credit.
They have to get, you have to get to your meeting. It's 10:06.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And thanks for the new form.
I applaud
job
you
with the
guys
forms,
compared to where we
Christine.
were
Yeah.
last year and finding out where the assets were. So
Come along.
Assets.
Dan, did you get my note? I was late, and you were really late.
I did. I've been tied up all day.
Oh, no, I just want to make sure that you didn't think I wasn't coming, that was all. Yeah.
Got it. I'm sorry.
No.
I was a few minutes late.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
Thank
That's
you.
good, I just felt bad.
Yes, Merry
Then I drove in,
Christmas.
and I'm like, there's a lot of cars, and I looked in, I saw the back of their heads, I'm like, that's not my meeting. I
Take
looked in, I'm like,
care,
that's not my meeting either, where are they?
Now, if you just kick the caffeine.
yeah, never.
Never.
You got me one,
I have jelly on the
sitting
outside.
here waiting.
Like,
I need, if it's food, I like
have
it.
that,
It's a good dinner.
their assets that they gave us, we have that.
Thank you, sir.
From last year.
Last year.
She
Yep.
didn't update it this year, but we could ask them for it. I don't know if they have that information yet or not.
if you really like hot peppers, stay
Yeah.
away from that one.
Watch out.
Okay.
Smell the hotness of it from here, for Pete's sake.
He comes well prepared, doesn't he?
So, okay, now
Thank you,
we,
sir.
so how do you folks want to proceed? Do you want to vote on the numbers that we've been given, or discuss them any further? If there's anything that you feel should or shouldn't be in here, or?
I think that they're doing their best estimating based on the information that they have today. So I applaud their efforts.
Yeah, I think this is, I mean, every time we come back to this table, the people get a little better, and I love the fact that they've presented not just the spending plan, but the funding plan in line with it, that if, moving forward, if, it could have saved a lot of hurt feelings and misunderstanding if the town departments had done that as well, because I've now sat through 3 different budget committee meetings where Steve was, he really feels like he was attacked, and he may come by that quite honestly, that because we didn't have we were presented with a spending plan, and then Steve is tasked with putting together a funding plan to go along with that to hand to the council, and because the two were so far out of line with one another for perfectly sensible reasons, Steve feels like he took a tremendous amount of grief over that, and like I said, probably not an unjustified feeling. So the fact that they've laid out both the spending plan and the funding plan all in one piece of paper avoids that disconnect that I think caused a lot of misunderstanding with the town CIP.
Yeah.
So like I said, we get better
Would you
at
like
it.
me to convey that to Mr. Forty? or you'll be
I'll see Steve pretty soon myself, so.
Okay. Thank you.
But also to make just a comment, besides the fact I think they've gone a long way, I think this is great. If they would have had something like this 5 years ago,
Yep, they wouldn't be where they are.
that ended up saying to the town through a specific, here are the things we're looking like, we may need expansion or renovation of this part, and here's these 7 or, then I think the townspeople given time, would have been gotten a lot better educated on what the needs of the school were, down to its, at least lumps that they could identify, and there may not have been such a craziness about, let's jump from here to new, or let's not do
Yeah.
any
It
renovations.
wouldn't have been as big a surprise.
The information would have been out there for, available.
I think this is
This is a projection of where they're going to be, and I would not be surprised at all to see this come in next year with some of this 17, 18 figures moving across,
Yeah.
Oh, I
so. But at
guess
least,
that's the
you've
default
got,
expectation.
what the expectation is right now, and we'll see, things will change as we move forward. But this is, this is good.
It's a guesstimate of what might come out of the facilities and,
Yeah, and without the land piece, because
Yeah.
and just to let this committee know, I think that there may be some land acquired, but, or not, or easements given, or seeing what they can do to just get a little more space from where the existing buildings are.
okay.
They may have that opportunity. It's not like, let's buy the Carpenter property. It's,
It's the back.
yeah, and the elementary school, if you remember, it's sort of like prison. It has one way in and one way out.
Yeah.
And so getting a second egress, and getting a better flow of traffic around and segregating buses is one of the things that's on their mind that doesn't necessarily come through. See how I'm speaking? It doesn't necessarily come through
Oh, yeah, because he went out the wrong way.
the equipment side. Okay. And so I think there may be some land structural problems and land easement costs and stuff like that as they try to figure out the best way to manage the land with whatever the changes are in the buildings and stuff.
Yeah. But, I mean, if you could relate to I just feel personally, at the junior, senior high school, we have an officer there, and we have a vehicle out front, and I just really feel strongly about trying to do, not to spend $257,000 now for the elementary front, but to do something. And if facility has to meet with Homeland Security or whatnot, I just would really like to see something there that would, unless it's solid steel and, bulletproof glass, it's not gonna stop, but something more than what's there. And I would really like to see a police officer in there. And that I really don't wanna wait. I just feel.
But that's not the school. That's the police department. Because right now, the Officer Stevens isn't funded by the school, it's
No.
funded by the police
The
department.
police
so that's
department.
not-
But, I would like to see some type of conversation with Chief Sears in regards to that and have somebody in the elementary school. And just some type of locks on those second set of doors that they can't just be opened. If they could just put a buzz system in that, I would just really feel a lot better. So.
And I think they have some specific plans, but I don't know what those are
Okay.
at this point.
And
I
it-
think
it-
they're talking about that stuff.
About $40,000.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whether it's
Not
cameras or
discuss it
some
on
other
camera
things.
even.
No, I was just gonna say, yeah, but I want something done.
Yeah, and I think that's on Sean's list. too,
Grandma.
principal.
Oh, well, when I got the phone call, my grandkids lived in Newtown when they had the shooting. So it's something close to me, so that's something I really want done.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Understood.
yep, so. So do we have a recommendation for the, and do we want to vote on accepting what the school has presented to the CIP
Asking for a
committee?
motion,
Please.
a motion to approve it as presented.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Jane shaking her head. Aye?
Well, I'm not a voting member.
Oh, that's right.
That's right, you're
That's
an
right.
alternate, so.
Okay, all right, very good, so that takes care of that. Yep, very good, and I like the idea too, Diane, having the pictures in there too.
Yeah. Now, I'm
Yep.
sorry, who seconded that motion?
Judy second.
Judy did, okay. I'm sorry, Judy.
Okay.
I was writing as fast as I could.
Thank you.
Now, we do have the minutes, Diane.
I did. I got
we
some
did-
minutes done today.
You might not have a chance to read them tonight, maybe we could approve them at our next meeting, or,
Yep.
but they're really,
Well,
Yep.
like, everybody has a copy.
Yep.
If we have a quarter,
Do we have some really old ones way back that we haven't done?
I thought at the last meeting we
Did
approved
we
two
take care of
sets, so I think we're
I
caught up.
didn't have anything marked
Let's
down on the September 29th meetings. Usually I write approved,
We did, I went back in the tape.
and we did approve
and
them?
We did
Okay.
approve both sets.
Okay.
And
All right.
Jane abstained because she was excused.
Okay, I just wanted to check, because usually I mark that on there. Alrighty.
Yeah, I mean, I'd personally be comfortable voting on them because they're pretty straightforward. I don't see
Exactly.
any
Even though-
I
problems
tried
with
to
them.
give an overview of what was presented without
Yeah.
getting, because
Yeah.
there was a lot of confusion
It was a bit of a
at the last
chaotic meeting,
meeting.
so-
Exactly,
Yeah.
so, and I think, now everything is much clearer, so,
Yeah, I think
wanted
the
to keep it.
presentation made this much clearer. I'm ready to,
Okay, make the move.
I'll motion that we accept the minutes of November 3rd, 2015 as written, if that's close enough.
I have one change that I identified. I'm sorry, if you want,
Well, I'll
Tony
second.
wants to second.
Okay.
We actually met upstairs in the town council chambers. We didn't meet in the auditorium, and I realized that as I was printing these for you.
So that would be,
That's an editorial
So
comment.
that's an editorial change.
alrighty?
So should I say as amended, or?
Yes,
Sure,
as
if you
amended.
could, Mr. Simon,
Okay.
thank you.
And any other further
I'll
discussion?
withdraw if I have to, my first one, and add the one, let's accept the minutes of November 3rd, 2015 as amended.
And I will second that.
And any further discussion? And all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, very good. Alrighty. And we did the school, we did the minutes. Anybody have any recommendations for the capital improvement program as it's being done now? Or, I think Diane's come along, was able with her forms and whatnot to really help all the department heads and everyone formulate it so it's coherent to everybody.
Where did the
I
number
love that.
come out in the proposed budget? Oh, I'm sorry.
And the town's budget?
Yeah, we asked for,
I-
what, about $1.3 million, or, I don't know, something like that.
And it was cut back, and I haven't, Tony, maybe you have some information. I know that the
I'm
budget
gonna say the
committee
wrong
had some recommendations. Did they change anything?
I might have it here on my
I think they cut
laptop.
our recommendations in half.
They cut ours in half, basically in half.
I don't think they
The
changed
council-
anything capital-wise
Ours
from
or the
what Steve
town?
proposed.
Okay,
The
Steve
dramatic
did.
changes were at Steve's level.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's what I thought.
Yeah, right,
Yeah,
right.
because
And
they were,
then the council looked at it.
yeah,
And I
because,
think it was
And then-
further reduced.
And now it's, the budget committee has already formulated their recommendations.
Yeah, we
Dan?
approved it at the
And you
last
approved it,
meeting
okay.
for the town. School hearing is January 11th. Yeah, I can dig the exact number out, but again, the big difference came from that fact that the department's heads came and said, here's what we want to do, and here's what it costs to do it. And then the filter that Steve put that through is, all right, here's the money that we already have sitting in capital reserve funds. Do I, as the town administrator, think we need to replenish it dollar for dollar based on these projects? And then the other thing is, frankly, we're a totally non-binding advisory committee. It's up to the
Yeah.
town council.
Yeah.
Well, first to Steve and then to the council to decide
Us to-
what they want to do with what we
Yeah.
advise them to do. It's
Well, you
really.
can recommend or not recommend the adoption of the budget, but you can't stop it. You can-
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's purely,
up to the council.
yeah, it's up to them. I mean, the most glaring example that I thought that came out of the budget hearings was the roads. That, I mean, first of all, we are waiting, I guess, for an updated study from UNH on,
Road surface management system.
and it's sort of an interesting thing that we've tasked them with, as I understood Steve's explanation, because their initial report was, here's what we think you need to do and here's what it costs. And I believe, as I understand it, what we've asked them for now is no, we're not going to spend anything like that. If we had X amount of money, what would you say that we should do?
So
Well-
basically, what are the priorities for
Yeah,
the
in a
year?
sense,
And I think
it's a
that's-
presupposed outcome, and Steve and I kind of went around in one of the hearings over that, but, because it leaves a fundamental question unanswered, but that's my beef, that's not this. Where things ended up coming out with the roads is essentially a very strong statement was made by the town administrator that, look, I have a certain capacity to get a budget passed by the council, and if I came with all this money to pave roads, it would never pass anyway. So I make judgments based on what I think the need is, as well as what I think the appetite to spend money is. And it's just another source of disconnect in the project, because we sit here somewhat isolated from that. We just say, gee, does it make sense to spend this amount of money to do this road? And taken in isolation, if you weren't paying for everything else in this town, absolutely, it would
Yeah.
make sense to do that. But that's part of what then Steve and the council and then the budget committee after the council all have to try to balance is, it isn't the only thing that the town is spending money on, so, where do things fall? And reasonable minds obviously differ quite a bit on
Yeah.
that.
But, you have to realize, too, that the town doesn't have any debt
Right.
either, so if something did come up, we would be able to get some bonding.
Right, that was
And-
another focus of Steve's presentation.
Yeah, and, the roads, to a certain degree, are a priority, because if they get to a certain degree of disrepair, it ends up costing more in the long run.
Absolutely. And the study, the original study that was done by UNH, which was 5-ish years ago, maybe, talked a lot about that.
Yeah,
And they showed the projections for what would happen, if you defer,
Yeah.
if you defer this kind of maintenance, it leads to that,
Yeah.
that resurfacing and the costs go up exponentially. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I have to say that being on the council and now participating in this process was eye-opening.
it is.
And I think having that booklet is going to be really important in making council decisions. Because I don't think that we had that, I don't think, we did not have that backup data before. And so when a project. No, the one, I'm sorry, Diane's.
Oh, Diane's.
Yeah.
We did, but it wasn't
Yeah.
disseminated to the council, and it wasn't used as a tool for the council to use as projects came in for your
You
consideration.
mean our
And it
CIP
really-
reports?
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
and it really
So
needs
that's
to be,
valuable.
because then, you hear, oh, well, yeah, they talked about it in CIP, and so you think, okay,
Yeah.
and you take that as gospel, and
At least it
you
should
know.
be discussed, and stuff should be on the table so people are aware. Everybody can vote no on something, but, I mean, it's the same thing with the school. If the school had said 5 years ago, I need to change the boiler, I'd like to redo 3 classrooms a year and renovate and all that, it could have been an entirely different story. It may not have been, but at least people would have said, oh, gee, I know the 7 sub-projects of this. 3 make sense, 4 don't, let's argue this.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, so the quick synopsis on what happened with capital in the town budget. Department heads proposed $1,315,930. That number sounds familiar
Yep,
to me.
yep.
It's not actually listed in here what we recommended, but if I recall, the only thing we
Oh,
struck
pretty close.
was the security. Steve
right.
proposed 625,115. Council approved 575,115.
That's not bad. I've seen it go.
And the budget committee,
50.
Budget committee did not change the council's
so it's
recommendation.
575.
We cut, you said we
And
cut
I'm
it.
looking at the packet that was
You
put
cut
together
it
for
in
the
half,
town,
but
and
I've
this
seen
just
it
talks
before.
about
It's
where
like,
the
we put
increase
up
is
a
going.
million.
So it doesn't talk to
says
575,
five,
which
and
is what
council
the
says two.
funding
But
is.
yeah, no,
But
that's
it
what we
did
said,
say,
that's fine.
gee,
Yeah, it's good.
So
I
this
believe
is
it's
not
going
bad.
up maybe about 125,000 from the year before. And they're saying that's due to the building improvement, capital reserve, stormwater, McAllen Dam, and recreational facilities. So if you're balancing the numbers, the 575 sounds like it may be a little bit more than it was last year.
I-
And
Yeah.
they're at least saying there are some
It is,
additional
definitely.
issues that have come up that we need to fund.
And this year too, so far, thank goodness with the snow, I mean, Rick and the guys haven't been out every weekend, so just. keep
Yeah,
the things so
and we haven't
far.
been paying either.
I'll tell you, yeah. And the planning board mentioned, Jane mentioned last time. Give kudos to the town hall.
Oh, yeah, no, they've done a great job.
DPW,
Yeah, those guys did a fabulous job.
the decorations downtown.
Oh,
Really,
yeah,
They did, it really looks nice, they did a nice job.
really. I mean,
It does
especially
look
when you're
nice.
coming into town, when you,
Yeah.
you could just see them from up the hill, all the wreaths. I just want to make sure they keep fluffing up the bows each year and fluffing up the wreaths. I don't want
Well,
them
at least
all-
we don't have the
I hate when
candy
they put them
canes.
squished, and they put them up squished.
They're very nice.
Yeah, no, the guys did a great job.
What?
The wreaths look very nice.
Oh, they look beautiful.
Yeah, they look very
They
classy.
really look nice. I just love it.
So I guess to put a wrap on where I started this thing is, if I had one ask of the town side, it would be, show the spending plan, show the funding plan,
Yeah.
and probably that the town administrator should become involved in the process a bit earlier so that what the department heads present to us doesn't end up being wildly far out of line with what he's thinking for his own
Yeah.
budget. Because it made, I mean, I'll be honest, it made me feel like a lot of what we did was useless with the town budget, because had we known what the divergence was gonna be with what would have been proposed to the council, it would have changed the way I was thinking about a lot of things, and you know, you personally, anyway, I was left feeling like a bit of an idiot. It's like, haha, you actually thought this was serious, what you were voting on? You know, that's some of what I felt after it was over.
Welcome to the budget
Welcome
committee.
to the club. I was just gonna, I
Just
didn't
to
know
give you
if I should
another-
say, yeah.
In years past, the town administrator was part of the CIP process, and he would meet with each department head before they submitted their CIPs to the planning department. And so that when they came to the CIP committee, they had already been vetted by the town administrator. So we didn't have the situation where he stood back and
Yeah,
made his
whoops.
cuts before it went to the town council. So it was a little bit different process.
No, it's been a learning experience, I think, for all of us, and from
kinda-
the school guy, finally, saying,
In some ways,
Oh.
it's nice to know what their perspective is unfiltered from, I could see it either way.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, and there's an importance for a certain degree of continuity on the committees you have. In theory, and I'm not sure life changes, it's why we have a staggered 3-year, because you're hoping you're having some people there that are always having a little bit. But to be quite honest, I've been doing this stuff for 5-6 years now, I guess.
Yeah.
something different. And you still learn every year, and it's good to go back on that length of time. So, yeah, this is not an elected committee, it's an appointed committee, structured and appointed committee. I think it has a tremendous role to make sure that
It's
key
an-
issues are raised in the town.
It's an extra set of eyes,
The-
you know,
the
and especially
school
with them
board and
being,
the town address capital infrastructure stuff.
you know, and with it being televised and whatnot, other people, and who knows, other people might get involved. And I think every department has fine-tuned it and
Coming.
became a little more focused each year to exactly what we wanted, which is great. So, and they even did that in the budget committee, and even the council followed through with asking for information on the vehicles. Well, how old is it? How much did you spend on maintenance this year? Should we or should we not? Can we get another year out of it? But they didn't have that information 3 years ago to make those decisions, and now they do.
Would it be worth our while, as we have the town plan, right? That goes out 5 years, right? Or 3 years, however we want to be able to look
Talking
at
about
it.
the CIP or the master
The
plan?
master plan.
Well, it usually goes out 10 to 15.
So, but
By the time we update the
if
whole
we
thing.
even got the town administrators to look towards that master plan, right? And to map what the master plan is. So if our master plan is to have more developments, let's just say, in downtown, where we want to have the, business and residential combined together, what effect does that have on the police department? What effect does that have on the fire department? What effect does it have on the school department? Meaning, probably not as many families would be coming, it would be a younger professional community. Okay, so what does that mean to our urban planning on top of that? Have we been able to map that all the way through, or no? Am I making sense?
There was a section in the CIP, the relationship between the CIP
Right.
and the master plan,
Yep.
and it was a narrative, and it kind of tied it all together. Because technically, your CIP and your master plan should go hand in hand.
Exactly, that's my point.
Master plan is more of a conceptual policy guide, whereas the CIP is the tool to implement it.
Right.
And we've sort of gotten away from that, and, you know, maybe we need to make more effort to try to dovetail them and ask the departments as part of their justification for the project. Is this project something that's supported in the town's master plan?
Right.
And how is it?
Like,
And that also is a prompt to us that maybe there's needs out there that we don't have in the master plan, so that
That's
next
my
time
point.
we update it,
Yep.
we need to make sure we're more
Or vice
comprehensive in
versa.
our
Yeah,
presentation.
exactly. Either way,
Or
either
ignoring
way.
something
But
in
we
the
s-
master plan and nobody's speaking about it, though at one point it was considered to be
I think
important.
that's a tremendous idea, because.
ooh, I have a good one, yay.
Well, again, I've been exposed to at least 3 different looks at the future of the town over the past few months. There's the CIP, there's statutorily, the town administrator has to present a 5-year forecast of the tax rate as part of the, part of what, of the town budget. And then there's the master plan, and I couldn't actually tell you how well those 3 outlooks relate to one another. My suspicion is that they're not all that well aligned.
No.
but-
Yeah, it may be time, and I love the discussion, because I'm sort of thinking, 2 years ago, we didn't even have the school or the town on the same calendar. Okay, and that took a painful process to get in, and so at least people have a chance to hear both dialogues at the same time, and not like there's 2 budget presentations and nobody remembered, oh gee, we voted a $2 million increase in the town, and we shouldn't vote a $53 million increase, in the, you know. So it's, the pieces are coming together, and I think the school participating in the capital improvement plan is, you know, considering where we started last year to where we are this year, where it's coordinating with the facilities committee and working with the JAC, I think that's great. I think this may be the next generation that says, maybe we should have that as something to discuss a little bit and think about over the winter, because it ain't gonna come from anybody else other than the budget committee and the CIP, because those are the only 2 committees that stick their nose into everybody's business. Okay.
That's why we're so well-liked.
Well, I understand, but it gives this committee and the budget committee the chance to be able to say, connect the dots between the 2 pieces, you guys be working together, you know, listen to what the other guy's saying, because it'd be nice if you took into consideration, you know, this need this year versus your need this year. And it's the only 2 places I know where the CIP and the budget committee that have that reach.
It just takes you, we talked earlier about the roads and UNH study and all that, right? It's the same philosophy, right? Protect the investment in the master plan, protect the investment in the CIP program. I mean, it really does make sense to try to align them together, as long as the alignment's going in the right direction, right? So, then it's great. If it's not, then all the trains in the track, you know, go off rail.
And if you think about economic development too.
Oh, exactly, same exact
If people
thing.
are pushing economic development and letting the roads deteriorate, it's not
Yeah.
exactly
Right, exactly.
an invitation to a successful master plan.
And getting back to the master plan, I mean, in order to have a CIP, you have to have a master plan. And it does state, Diane was right, and under the regulatory powers of capital improvements, RSA 674-7, because I read it tonight, and then I pulled out my master plan to read the referral to it. In preparing a capital improvement program, the planning board of the capital improvement program committee shall confer in a manner deemed appropriate by the board of the committee with the mayor or the board of selectmen or the chief fiscal officer of the budget committee, other municipal offices, officials and agencies, the school board or boards, and shall review the recommendations of the master plan in relation to the proposed capital improvement program. So it does tie in.
And that's town only though, isn't it, Rosie? Is there a?
No, it says
applies
school.
with the schools,
No, it
too.
says school board of boards.
Well,
I mean, I
understand,
can
but
put
is there a
together
master
a
plan for the
with-
school? Or is the master
Well,
plan we
we-
talk about really only the town side?
There's
of the
not a
question?
chapter in the master plan, but what I used to do is I would put together a table, and I would break it out by department, and I would take each CIP project that was recommended for funding, and I'd tie it back to a specific goal in the master plan, and if there was a specific project. And that way, it showed that we were making progress in implementing the master plan. But that sort of fell by the wayside, I
And the
don't know,
master
5 or 6
plan
years ago.
does talk about our different town facilities, and the school is one of the facilities, even though we don't control it, but it does list the student population, some projections, how many students now enrolled, and whether or not, because of the demographics that were studied in compiling the master plan that time, as to whether or not we expect an increase in student population.
That may be a request to the school. And now, whether it's permanent or temporary, CIP has, whether it's because of using funds, or whether it's because this actually ties with the renovations and ads you've been requesting, and all this makes sense to you. I don't know if there should be some participation of the school in at least a section of the master plan that says, here's, we're doing a 5-year budget now, we're thinking of capital things. You know, one of the decisions that's been made so far.
Well, especially under that chapter, that would be chapter 8 that's listed under.
For the foreseeable future.
Yeah.
Community facilities.
With our
Yep.
own school
Well, maybe
district.
that's the next section. that
That's
we
the
work
next
on.
thing, yeah, that'd be great.
Realistic or not, it's the decision not to bring that up to vote, so. and-
Yeah.
Russ, this also ties in, or I should address the committee, ties into what Al Zink, I think, was saying at an early meeting.
Mhm.
But before we can put that plan together, we have to do an assessment, a facilities analysis. And I
Mhm.
know the schools have been pushing to do that.
Yeah.
And we've been pushing to do that for all the town buildings. But that's, you know, is actually requires doing, you know, an asset management plan
Mhm.
and having a system for evaluating so that that can then be integrated into the master plan and the CIP process.
Yeah,
But we don't have a whole lot of data to work with, and we don't know what the priorities are.
yeah.
We, based on Rosie's insistence, and it's one of the reasons she's where she is, we talked about actually getting a list of assets
Mhm.
for the town,
Yeah.
which I remember was still
Mhm.
12 pages of detail. We haven't even attacked that yet. Said,
Yeah.
is there a better way to organize
Yeah.
it? But we're asking the questions, and, if we get the data, I think it's a good forum to
I
discuss it.
mean, we did the tours, so we could see the properties, and we could physically see if we felt anything needed repair immediately and whatnot. But I think that's a good point, Russ, is to look at that, the asset list. And maybe, right after the first of the year, maybe in February, get together and take a tour in detail and, ask department heads if there's anything extra that they really need right now, is they having any problems with the buildings,
Or
or,
even getting our financial controller in to say, I know I gave you a list 2 years ago that's, 12 pages, and you can't really read it. Let's talk about how you group this together, which I don't think we spent much time on. Think about the master plan and how that should be coordinated with the budget committee and CIP. I wouldn't, if nobody's gonna argue, why shouldn't we make this at least a policy discussion area on the town?
Well, there was discussion last summer of possibly instituting a facility manager position who
Mhm.
would work part-time for the schools as well as for the town. And I think Al Zink and the school people met with Mike Hoffman. Of course, Mike has experience having worked at the university. Of course, they have a very active and visible facility management department,
Mhm.
and that's what they do.
Yeah.
And
Just to give a quick update on that, the school department did put money in their budget proposal for that. The town did not from their side, so I would call it very up in the air as
Mhm.
to what the interest level from the two sides.
Did that come from the school board or from the?
That came from the school board in their budget
The
proposal.
school board for their budget, okay.
We
I
did
know
have a
because-
process.
Yeah.
It'd be nice if we can accelerate the process.
Well, the council hasn't even discussed
Having
it,
them do it?
but
I'm sorry.
what,
You mean
what
but
there
they have
was
one for their
discussed,
own
and I didn't know that it was
No, but
reference
they
to the
was-
facility manager position, but Steve is promoting some legislation in Concord.
Okay.
Because right now it's not allowed, which is ridiculous to me. And I don't really understand it, but it's not allowed to share a position like that, so.
Oh, the school and the town couldn't share it.
So I know that they're working at that end.
But, if you talk about the small city structure, which would put the school's financial health under the auspices of
Right.
the select board
I know.
and council. Not that they
Mm.
dictate policy or how the school's
You're gonna
put
get
together, but they do
somebody
taking the funding of it.
Right.
That would have made it easier for us. That's been the largest frustration of the past 5 years that I know Rosie and I have had, and I know Judy as well, and I know Jane just started on some of these, though she's been on the planning board, is not having the right hand speak to the left hand.
Right.
We're the people
Yeah.
who see the pieces, and we're saying, why don't you people speak together and work together?
But, you know, if there's rule of law that doesn't allow them to share it, that might mean that we can't get one person and they can't do both. Okay, but if you get our guy and our guy, and we say, you two are working together, you're going out together, we want our guy to look at the school with you, and you look at the town with him, and that's the only way they're gonna be able to know if they can coordinate anything.
Well, you both contribute to the same salary, and then argue about who gets more of the.
Well, I think that's what they ideally want to do.
Yeah,
So, I mean, because in a perfect, if you have two separate people funded by, in
Yeah.
two separate ways, you can hope that they're gonna work together, but there's no way to mandate it. You know, we can end up in the same, in an uglier situation.
It's trust. Somebody runs the asset, but he provides service to both. And the corporations have been using what they call matrix management and joint accountability for things for years. So you just can't have those
we
tunnel
just have
visions
to,
anymore.
just have to find a husband and wife team, you know, and.
Take it home from work with you? Oh, yeah, right.
I nominate Rosie and
Work
Charlotte.
together.
Oh, God, after the day we had today, you kidding me? But-
Yeah, I have no reason why we shouldn't meet
Is it
in
a full
February.
Yeah, so,
This has been,
Live through the
got my
process
calendar out.
once.
just, never mind. I'll tell you later.
Budget hearings are, well.
It's just a very difficult day for everyone. I've had
Yeah,
it.
it's insane. Today was insane.
Today
Just
was
insane. Yeah.
a real crazy.
January 31st, right?
If I didn't have the school facilities committee, it would have been very easy.
all right, so I think we're
Can we
ready to
wrap this up? I
adjourn.
want to go home and have
It
dinner.
is, you're
Yes.
meeting once a week or two.
Yeah, for 3 hours a night.
So after the holidays, we can shoot an email out, and maybe
Okay, so we'll wait.
do something for February,
Yeah,
Diana? Do you
February,
want them
March.
to book it now so we don't run into problems?
We can wait till February.
Okay,
Yeah.
wait until after the
Yeah,
first
or
of the
after-
year, and we
after-
can,
Even after the vote or before the vote, let's make the decision then
Yeah.
when we see what the warrant articles are, but this may be an interesting time to say, let's meet just after we know what the vote was,
Yeah.
or there's some surprises, let's meet before the vote.
yeah. And it's January 11th, you said that, for the school meeting?
The budget hearing.
The budget
hearing
hearing,
is
January 11th it was, okay.
And the school
January 6th.
Deliberative?
deliberative is the end of January, but they have to have their warrants together by the
Prior to,
13th.
how many days, yeah.
Is it the
They both
13th
have
of
different dates,
January or
but
something
usually
like
it's
that?
by the third week in January. I think
Okay.
both of
Okay.
them have to.
So if we
something
could,
like
if
that.
we could ask our significant others in those departments to get a schedule of dates and times for what's
Yeah, that would
going
be
on,
cool to have had that before.
that would be great. And
Or,
Like a calendar.
A
This
calendar
meeting,
for-
this deliberative session,
oh,
this,
the
you know,
deliberative session.
Yeah.
this
The
is,
budget
you know,
committee
this is
used
when
to
the
have-
warrant articles have to be in
You
this,
guys
you
have
know.
a calendar
Yeah.
that integrated
I
the
think
school
Matt did
and the
that, didn't
town.
he?
he might have, yeah.
A
Steve
calendar
Forney.
for,
Yeah, it
Yeah.
was.
Yeah, somebody in that office.
Yeah, so if we can get that, so,
essentially,
The
that-
budget committee usually puts together a calendar that squeegees the town and the school issues together.
Together?
And if
all right, and I would like to thank Diane for all her help in this process. She has been instrumental. I'm telling you.
And I'd like to thank you, Rosie, for your leadership and helping me make it a much
It's
more
a-
efficient process
in a-
than maybe in
in a-
years past.
In a fun process.
And your hard work in asking me to be quiet, which we all appreciate. It's quite
No, I
a,
think we had a good.
No, I think we,
Good job.
we did good this year. I think we all did good. And we'll get together sometime after the first of the year to set a date. And maybe we, in the meantime, we can ask for updated asset sheets from the town and asset sheets from the school.
all right, so deadline for warrant articles is the 19th of January.
that's for the school, the town,
That's
and
for
both.
everything.
Everybody?
Last year we were
Thank you,
running
Dan.
Deadline.
the December 28th and January 21st difference. So
Okay.
maybe they're coming close together.
Very good. You take all your napkins together.
Okay.
Even over my
No
wine.
reindeers
Oh, a
or
motion?
Santa Clauses?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn? Second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Very good. Thank you, everyone. Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy New Year.
Happy holidays. Take the easy way out.